Hey everyone, this is Derrick Broze with the Conscious Resistance Network, and welcome to another episode of the Conscious Resistance Live.
This is Derrick Broze. This is Derrick Broze of the Conscious Resistance. I'm here in Standing Rock.
That man is wanted in 5 different countries: Chile, Argentina, Brazil.
We've been fighting a long time. We've all lost so very much. So many loved ones gone. You are not alone. There are pockets of resistance all around the planet. We are at the brink. Above all, stay alive. You have no idea how important you are. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
All right, everybody, welcome back to episode 179 of the Conscious Resistance Live, my monthly podcast where I check in with you to report on my latest articles, as well as report on information that you're probably not getting from the daily and weekly shows that, even though they claim to be alternative independent media, many people are just parroting and repeating the same things that they hear in the mainstream clickbait media. So tonight, though, we got a big show. We're going to talk about 3 main stories. First, we're going to cover my brand new article about activists raiding this farm. Ridgeland Farms is what it's called in Wisconsin, trying to free thousands of beagles who are still under the Trump administration being experimented on. And, we'll look at that situation, the history of it, and how RFK has basically been silent about that. We're also going to talk about my previous article about Oracle, Trump administration, AI surveillance, and everything you need to know. And then we're going to do a little segment where I've just hit a few headlines. I've got like 4 or 5 stories that I think are important that you may have missed over the last couple of weeks. And then my final main story is going to be about Melania Trump, Paolo, Zampolli, and alleged connections to Epstein and Donald Trump and all that stuff that's been kind of unfolding quietly on social media, mainly on Twitter, that many of you probably haven't seen. But before we do all that, I want to remind you guys, my website is theconsciousresistance.com. Guys, this is the website that I've been using since 2013 to broadcast all my content, my documentaries, like The Pyramid of Power, my podcasts, my interviews, like my recent interview with Scott Horton, my recent interview on the Jimmy Dore Show or on InfoWars and elsewhere. All the content I do, talks, everything can be found at theconsciousresistance.com. Please do subscribe to our email list and bookmark the website. Check it out once a week. Before we get into our shows, I do have a big announcement, and that is I have an event coming up with Larkin and Amanda Rose in Prescott. I think it's actually, I was told Prescott by locals, Prescott, Arizona. I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago that I'm going to be going on tour, my first tour in 5 years. The Activation Tour 2026, we're doing like 17 cities across the United States starting in May and then again in July. It's going to include a new presentation for me on the importance of exit and build. It's going to include music from myself and some guests on some of the tour stops and opportunities for networking and connecting to locals in your area if you're looking for like-minded people. But we are going to kick things off Friday, May 1st, so less than 2 weeks away. Activation Tour, Prescott, Arizona, myself, Larkin, and Amanda Rose. And this will be the only stop that my love, Miriam Gomez, will be on. Unfortunately, she's decided to stay home from the tour life, but she'll be there for this one. And this is happening, as I said, Friday, May 1st, 6 to 10 p.m., Prescott, Arizona. It costs a measly $5 to attend to help us cover the cost of the venue. I will put the link in the show notes if you want to RSVP. And of course, the main place to learn more about this is activationtour.org. activationtour.org/about will take you to our full schedule of all the cities we're visiting. As I said, we're going to start with Prescott, then we're going Denver on May 13th, Albuquerque, New Mexico, Sedona, Arizona, San Francisco, California, Portland, Oregon, Salt Lake City. I'll be doing a workshop at Rise and Vibes Festival in Durango, California at the end of May. And then we're going to pick it back up in July with Houston, Austin, Dallas, Wichita, Kansas, Columbia, Missouri, Minneapolis, Minnesota, the Quad Cities in Iowa, Columbus, Ohio, Pittsburgh, PA, New York City, Baltimore, Maryland, Nashville, Tennessee, Atlanta, Georgia, and then Orlando, Florida. And if you guys are interested in helping us make this happen, please email me at intothelight@protonmail.com with the subject Activation Tour 2026. I do have volunteers in most of these cities that are helping me make it happen, but I could always use more help, and I would definitely welcome that. So again, activationtour.org/about for the full schedule. Come see us in Prescott, Arizona, or Denver, Colorado, or anywhere else we're coming near you. And let's connect, because as I've said recently, and I will say time and time again, in-person events are more important than ever. And too many people are living their lives from behind the computer screen and not connecting face to face, which is what really matters. Whether it's the Iran war, COVID 1984 pandemic or fake alien invasion or whatever other garbage they've got cooking up. This is the time more than ever as we approach 2030. I don't know if you guys have noticed, as we approach 2030, this is the time to be connecting and building locally in your community. So I hope to see you guys somewhere across the United States for the Activation Tour 2026. All right, so let's go ahead and pick things up with my first story. This is a brand new, just released today as I'm recording this article over at Last American Vagabond, thelastamericanvagabond.com. Hopefully you guys know I write articles there. I've been writing articles for the Last American Vagabond next month, starting in May, for 6 years now, which is kind of crazy to think about. Animal activist arrested attempting to rescue tortured beagles while RFK Jr. claims ignorance. And you can see from these photos right here on the screen, this is kind of a montage of some photos that we found that were taken by a local or a photographer who was there at the scene. You can see activists here being pepper sprayed, shot with rubber bullets, trying to break into these fences and go rescue these beagles. Now let's give you a little bit of lowdown. As always, I'm just going to give you the short version. I hope you guys will read the article because I spent quite a few hours putting this together, and it'll give you a nice breakdown of the situation. But as I said, you probably saw the videos this weekend. If you didn't, here's a little sample of them. Let me go ahead and show you this. This is at Ridgeland Farms in Wisconsin, where hundreds of activists, some say up to 1,000 is the reports I was seeing, were on the scene trying to free 2,000 beagles from the Ridgeland Farms facility in Wisconsin. And Ridgeland Farms is a USDA licensed dog breeder and seller, as well as, basically they can do tests on the dogs. And this is just a short clip. Like I said, there's lots of video and pictures that we'll pull up in just a moment. And this issue matters not only to those of us who are animal activists, as I do consider myself, or those who just love dogs, which probably most people do, but to people who care about accountability, because this was one of the major issues that Donald Trump and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said they were going to end. You guys remember there was the big Beagle Gate scandal under Anthony Fauci. And this was something that many people were disgusted by. They're using beagles, one of the most beloved American dogs that are known for being docile. In fact, that's the reason they're chosen for these experiments. And they are using them to test them for fruit flies and all kinds of different things. And it really sickened a lot of people. As I said, it became known as Beaglegate. So this facility, Ridgeland Farms, though, has been under fire since at least 2017. And we'll get into that in a moment. But most recently, activists have been trying to go in there to free as many of these dogs as possible. They went in March, about a month ago, and they did free 30 dogs, somewhere 27 to 30 dogs, and they were rehomed and adopted by people. Now, the people who are involved in that, they're being charged with trespassing and criminal burglary and all kinds of things. So the activists were prepared to go there and come back in stronger numbers. In fact, the protest was planned for Sunday, yesterday, April 19th, but at the last minute, the activists and the organizer, Wayne Sung, who you can see here, is on Twitter. Waves of tear gas, peaceful animal lovers are being tear gassed, pepper sprayed, and fired at with rubber bullets at Ridgeland Farms. At least a dozen activists have been arrested. Hundreds of others are on the property now trying to rescue the dogs. They decided they were going to kind of switch it up and do a last minute change and go on Saturday, early Saturday. And the police were prepared for them. I mean, they kind of promoted it online, and I think that might have been a mistake. I get that this is really good PR for them, but if your goal is truly to try to free the animals, you probably want to be a little bit more secret about it. But we'll see how it goes. Nevertheless, when Wayne Sung arrived on the property, he was very quickly arrested. Again, he is a co-founder of the organization Direct Action Everywhere. He was an organizer of the Ridgeland Farms Action. He's also an attorney, and he was attempting to serve Ridgeland with a lawsuit when he was arrested by Dane County Sheriff's Office deputies pretty much as soon as he walked on the scene. As you can see here in this picture right here on screen, he walked up and he had his papers in hand trying to serve the papers. And as you can see, this comment says, somebody says, that's not how you sue a company or person. Good idea to get press. Great press, though. Yeah, it is. Like I said, this is probably more of a PR move, but it's kind of messed up that as soon as he showed up, they arrested him. And as I put in the article here, these cops said that they arrested him because he was suspected of conspiracy to to commit burglary, basically because he was the organizer. And they're like, look, you're showing up here with a bunch of activists, you're encouraging them, so you're going to be charged with conspiracy to commit burglary. Now, one of my friends who I met a few months back, animal rights activist Jamie Logan, she was at the farm that morning. She described the scene as, quote, the best and the worst of humanity. She wrote on Instagram, I saw compassion met with extreme violence. Peaceful protesters met with tear gas, pepper spray, and rubber bullets. I saw people show up with courage, love, and nothing but a commitment to peaceful change for the puppies at Ridgeland Farms who are criminally abused. And this is a picture you can see here. Again, the photos were taken by Yash Mangalik, who is a young student photographer who does a great job and just captured these photos. So thank you. We're using them for the article. And then after this, the arrest of Wayne Sung and the pepper spraying and the rubber bullets, the Dane County Sheriff's Office, they start posting their own version of events on Facebook. And they wrote, as hundreds attempted to break through barriers and fencing on the farm, others blocked the roadways to slow the response of law enforcement and other emergency personnel. The DCSO, the sheriff's office, said that protesters who showed, quote, clear intent to break into the facility were pepper sprayed with tear gas, and those who refused to de-escalate were then shot with less than lethal 40 millimeter munitions and pepper balls. And those things hurt. I've been hit by them before. They also claim that one protester drove a vehicle through a fence and was arrested. The sheriff's office posted photos of what they called burglary tools, which were recovered from activists, including saws, fence cutters, and sledgehammers. And yeah, like I said, some of the most ardent, some would say extreme activists there definitely showed up, and they were planning on cutting the fences down and going in there and trying to free the dogs. And that's how strongly a lot of people feel about this. They said, as I mentioned, that Wayne Sung was arrested on probable cause for conspiracy to commit burglary for his role in planning to attempt the rescue of the Beagles. And Dane County Sheriff Calvin Barrett said, quote, it was clear from the beginning that this was not going to be a peaceful protest. The sheriff's office response to the active break-in attempts by hundreds of protesters was appropriate and proportionate to the behaviors observed. Now, whether you trust that or not, I guess is a matter of personal opinion. I think it's bullshit. But at the same time, this is how things go, guys. Nobody should really be surprised. I mean, this is how the system operates, right? So when people want to, try to stand up against injustice, whether it's for animals or whether it's for, say against this, because I was at Standing Rock, that's why it's coming to my mind, Standing Rock situation a decade ago, 2016. You might feel as an activist, as an individual, as a human being, that you're completely in the right and morality is on your side, but the law is against you. Well, guess what, guys? That's all the cops do. They defend the law. They defend the state. And this is why many people, anarchists, are against cops, because yes, you can point out some good apples of things that cops do. They help little grandmas across the street, or they rescue people in certain situations, and that's all well and good. But when push comes to shove, the police are the defenders, the enforcement arm of the state. And that's what they always are going to be. So they're just going to be order followers. That's what they'll do. Is like, sorry, I'm just following my orders. I love dogs too, guys, but I got to follow my orders. So bump, beat you over the head. Because they don't have thinkers, as John Trudell said in the past. They don't have great thinkers. They just have doers. They have listeners. They have followers. That's what they do. So, maybe you should reconsider blind support and obedience for the police when it comes to situations like this. Nevertheless, I digress, and let's continue. All right, so this part is a history of Ridgeland Farms. Again, I'm not going to read the whole thing here, but suffice it to say that this place has been under the watch of activists and the law in Wisconsin for some time. Back in April 2017, activists entered the facility and they captured graphic video depicting the Beagles' living conditions at Ridgeland Farms. Afterward, Wayne Sung, the attorney who was arrested, Dane for Dogs, and the Alliance for Animals filed a petition under Wisconsin law seeking the appointment of a special prosecutor, which in fact I learned in the reporting for this article, that is a specific thing under Wisconsin law that allows people to do that, where they can, if you can file a petition and prove in the court that the district attorney should be filing charges and has failed to file charges, then they will appoint a special prosecutor to do an investigation. So that's what they did in 2017. And they actually succeeded. And so all the way up to October 2024, the animal rights activists presented their case at an evidentiary hearing in Dane County Circuit Court. And it's at that hearing where they showed videos from inside the facility where people were able to sneak in and, as I said, get footage of the dogs and how they were actually living. They had videos, they had witness testimony from former employees of Ridgeland Farms. One former employee, a man named Scott Gilbertson, who worked at the farm and the facility in 2021 and 2022, he said that he witnessed near daily surgeries conducted without anesthesia. So this was a big concern. People are calling it vivisection, which, as you guys know, is this sort of ancient and barbaric practice that used to be pretty common of cutting open animals without anesthesia. Guess what, guys? It didn't stop in the 1900s and the 20th century. It's still going on. Proving these claims would show, being able to prove this would show that Ridgeland Farms violated state laws, Wisconsin state laws, which prohibit animal mistreatment and require adequate shelter. So April 17, they get in the building, they document what's going on. October 2024, they get an evidentiary hearing, they present their evidence. Then by January 2025, just over a year ago, Dane County Circuit Court Judge Rhonda Lanford, she actually did appoint a special prosecutor saying that, quote, the activist had established probable cause to believe that Ridgeland has committed crimes under Wisconsin's animal cruelty laws and that the district attorney has failed to issue a complaint or commence an investigation. So they were actually successful. That led to the appointment of a special prosecutor in February 2025. They appointed La Crosse County District Attorney Tim Groenke, who was, as I said, special prosecutor. So he reviewed all the documents, all the testimony and everything, and different information from the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture, Trade, and Consumer Protection. And he eventually released a report, and he identified 5 potential areas for charges that they could bring against Ridgeland. That include these so-called cherry eye procedures, devocalization procedures, proper shelter and space requirements, sanitation standards, and improper enclosures causing serious injuries. The report concluded that most claims lack strong evidence. He said, for example, that the reports of devocalization, which is where they literally are cutting out the vocal cords of the dogs, that the witnesses had credibility issues, and that only, quote, only eyewitness evidence of devocalization was from a former employee who left in 2010. So this is more than 15 years ago. And they found no records, witnesses, or inspections indicating that devocalization procedures were done within the last 6 years. Maybe they were and they destroyed records, who knows? But nevertheless, the special prosecutor found the strongest evidence were violations relating to these cherry eye procedures, which involves removing a part of a swollen or prolapsed eye gland, the tear gland, from the dog. And they're doing so, again, without anesthesia. The report concluded Ridgeland Farms routinely allowed non-veterinarians to conduct the surgery. They did not use general anesthesia, which resulted in pain to the animals and potential aftercare pain. Unlike other claims, the procedures were done well within the statute of limitations. The vet board and the DATCP determined that the way Ridgeland Farms personnel did the cherry eye procedure did not meet current standards of veterinary care in Wisconsin. The records provided by Ridgeland Farms themselves showed proof of these occurrences. And the special prosecutor concluded this procedure was, in fact, animal mistreatment as defined under the statute and thus could be charged. So to recap, activists in 2017 go into this facility. They capture undercover video. They file for the appointment of a special prosecutor through a petition. They're successful with this. In 2024, they start presenting actual evidence in court in a hearing. January 2025, a special prosecutor is appointed. February, he begins his investigation. He releases the report, the investigation, in October 2025, so just not too far back recently, and finds that they were illegally violating Wisconsin statutes and doing these procedures, these cherry eye procedures, without anesthesia, without proper medical care, and in some cases without even actual veterinarians, and that this could be charged. But wait, there's more. Unfortunately, well, before we get to the unfortunately, let me also mention that this lines up with other data points that we have. For example, the Wisconsin Veterinary Licensing Board was already investigating veterinarians employed by Ridgeland Farms in connection with these cherry eye procedures. The board ordered the emergency suspension of the lead veterinarian and facility manager at Ridgeland Farms, a Dr. Rick Von Domelin. A judge upheld that decision in September 2025. So the lead veterinarian and facility manager, he got his license suspended for doing these same things. So when the special prosecutor is investigating, he's like, look, there's definitely evidence for that. But wait, He writes in his report that, quote, Ridgeland Farms made clear that they would argue that because they conduct research and that all of the dogs being bred would also be for research purposes, that the Wisconsin statutes do not apply to them. Basically, if you're doing research, it's kind of a get out of jail free card to abuse animals. And in the end, the special prosecutor in Ridgeland Farms reached a settlement whereby Ridgeland agreed to shut down its dog sale and breeding for sale operations and surrender its state breeding license by July 1st, 2025, that's supposed to say 2026, I'll fix that, of this year, 2026, in exchange for no prosecution. And of course, they continue to deny that any abuse or neglect actually happened. So they have a deadline coming up here, what is it, April? So May, June, July. They got like 3 months and they're supposed to shut down this facility. And here's the messed up part. The agreement states, quote, the state of Wisconsin agrees that all alleged civil and criminal violations referred to and contemplated by Judge Rhonda Lanford's referral will not be brought against Ridgeland Farms and are forever barred from being brought in a criminal or civil action. So they don't have to admit any wrongdoing. They can't be charged now or anytime into the future. And they basically just have to give up a license. That's it. There's not any major repercussions for them, even though this special prosecutor's report found that they were absolutely committing, animal abuse and violating these statutes. And for the final section, my friends, HHS Secretary Kennedy feigns ignorance. Only just a couple of days before this, before the activists went to Ridgeland Farms, Wisconsin Representative Mark Pocan questioned HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. about the treatment of the Beagles at the facility during a House Appropriations Committee hearing. He said that, this July 1st deadline was going to come up and that if the dogs are not rehoused or taken care of, they will be euthanized. So I actually do have that clip of that exchange, and we're going to go ahead and play that real quick.
I just have one last one, because in my district, we have something called Ridgeland Farms. That's a Beagle breeder for research. They've had 311 code violations, including very serious harm to the health of dogs. The head of NIH, which you can ask, I said some of the nicest things about. I really like your head of the NIH that you have, said that there's a policy about Beagle testing that would not allow animals to be tortured. And that's part of what's happening with this facility. So grants are still, in the last month, going to groups that are getting Beagles from Ridgeland Farms. Could you please take a look at this, because they are under, right now, not a court order, a settlement to close down part of their breeding facility by July 1st, but they're not getting rid of the 2,000 Beagles they have. And if they don't, we know what's going to happen. They're going to get euthanized. And I just want to make sure that for that commitment, which is a good commitment, not to harm the Beagles, right now you're still giving money to groups through the NIH that are using Beagles from this highly questionable farm.
I have a hard time, I believe you, but I have a hard time believing that. I need to look into this.
I would appreciate
and talk to the office, because we're trying to end, we've done more than any other administration in history to end animal testing. And in fact, in this year's budget, there's a $25 million budget request that will allow us to end. We've ended most of it. There's a few things that are going on, mainly veterinary, where you have to use animals. But that, what you're describing, should not be happening.
And I'll be glad to share these with you so you have them.
Okay.
And then if we could have that follow-up, I really would appreciate it.
I will. And again, I'm going to give you Ken Callahan's number, and
I really appreciate it.
We will get back to you.
Thank you.
So there you have it. That was RFK Jr. at the recent House Appropriations Committee, where he was confronted by Wisconsin Representative Mark Pocan. And again, he brings up that the Ridgeland Farms has 311 violations, including serious harm to the health of dogs. And Kennedy says, I have a hard time. I believe you, but I'm having a hard time believing that. I'll look into this. And he says that the Trump administration has done more than any other administration in history to end animal testing. After this, Mark Pocan posted on Twitter, quote, in my district, a Beagle breeding facility called Ridgeland Farms has hundreds of code violations, including serious harm to the health of dogs. Yet the NIH is still giving funding to groups that use Beagles from this facility. I urged Secretary Kennedy to stop this practice. Now, let's give credit where credit's due for a moment. Kennedy is correct that the Trump administration has taken steps to reduce animal testing. The NIH announced plans to establish the Office of Research, Innovation, Validation, and Application, ORIVA, to coordinate NIH-wide efforts to develop the use of non-animal approaches for biomedical research. Great. That happened last year. People are celebrating it. Then in the same month, April 2025, the US FDA, Food and Drug Administration, announced that it was going to replace animal testing in the development of monoclonal antibody therapies with, quote, more effective human-relevant methods. The FDA simultaneously released a roadmap for reducing animal testing and preclinical safety studies, and they recently celebrated 1 year of implementing policy changes to reduce animal testing. So great. They are trying to do certain steps. FDA, NIH, things are happening. We'll see where they actually go, or if it's just more lip service or just kind of window dressing. However, it is absolutely true that the NIH continues to fund these programs, and that there are certain institutions which are funded by taxpayer dollars, which are buying beagles from Ridgeland Farms. And so Justin Goodman, who's the senior vice president of the White Coat Waste Project, says that since Kennedy took office, more than $126 million in new funding has been awarded to facilities that experiment on dogs and cats. Goodman wrote, quote, starting over a year ago at their request, we provided Kennedy and NIH Director Bhattacharya's teams with info on taxpayer-funded grants paying for cat and dog testing, including Fauci-approved experiments on Ridgeland Beagles. Instead of shutting down the labs and retiring the survivors, the NIH gave the labs we identified more money. RFK literally lied to Congress about it this week. He continued, since day one of RFK's tenure, he has had the authority to cut funding for these grants overnight. He even admitted this, but instead he has kept them alive. And I go in here to just document more proof of this, how the White Coat Waste Project has obtained documents through open records requests showing that beagles from Ridgeland Farms continue to be used in NIH-funded experiments, including tick bite studies at the University of Missouri, which was originally approved under Fauci, but it continues under the Trump administration. And other funding sources, including the Department of the Interior, National Science Foundation, the Department of Agriculture. Involved universities include the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, Colorado State University, University of Georgia, Kansas State University, and Texas A&M University. So all of those universities are involved in experiments that relate to dogs coming from Ridgeland Farms. And while these experiments are not specifically related to the original Beaglegate scandals that were exposed under Fauci in 2021, the continuation of these experiments is definitely getting, RFK some criticism from the MAHA movement, and especially because, guys, you can't forget that it is RFK himself who wrote the book, The Real Anthony Fauci, and he explicitly has spoke against Beaglegate in his book and elsewhere, and claimed he would put an end to these experiments as part of the Trump administration. But as the White Coat Waste Project has shown, these tests continue on dogs, cats, primates, and other animals, including ones that were first funded by Fauci. And so to raise awareness of this, the White Coat Waste Project recently launched a national WTF RFK ad campaign targeting Kennedy for continuing these Fauci-era animal labs. Now, I did reach out for a comment from the HHS, the NIH, and the USDA, all the agencies involved in this. And the only ones that got back to me were the HHS, actually, which thank you for that. They told me, quote, that Ridgeland does not receive NIH grants or funding, and that the NIH enforces strict policies to protect animal welfare and maintain rigorous oversight as the agency works to reduce reliance on animal models over time. So that's what happened this weekend, guys. And like I said, you'll probably be seeing the videos go viral. But if you want to help people understand the real situation and what was going on behind the scenes, don't just give them the New York Times article or some, clickbait on social media. Send them my article so they can be properly informed on the situation. All right, let's go ahead and pick up with my next article, which is, of course, at thelastamericanvagabond.com. I wrote this one earlier in April. Oracle and the rise of AI, the AI surveillance state under Trump. Again, I'm not going to read the full article for you here. I wanted to spend some time on the animal one, but this one we're going to go a little bit more brief. But what you really need to know is that Larry Ellison, the head of Oracle, who has been involved, as I've reported in the past, with the CIA since the founding of Oracle. They, named themselves after a CIA project. They bragged that the CIA was their first customer. Post 9/11, Larry Ellison was already calling for things like digital ID and, trying to keep society good by constant monitoring and things of that sort. So that should tell you a little bit about who this guy is and what his company's, about. I also have previously reported in my other article how big tech and AI firms are winning under Trump, including Oracle. And I've also reported in the past on how, like, Trump's second day in office, he awarded Oracle, as well as other companies, this this contract for the Stargate AI project. They said they were going to fund it up to $500 billion, with Oracle themselves saying they were going to pledge $100 billion to kickstart the effort to build new data centers to power the AI initiatives, including developing a so-called mRNA cancer vaccine. And since that time, their relationship between the U.S. government has only grown stronger. So again, you can go back to my article here, August 2025, big tech and AI firms are winning under Donald Trump's second administration. Lots of examples of that. But let's go through a few here. This is me kind of just summarizing everything that happened in March, because March appeared to be a big month. First, on March 5th, there was the signing of something called the Ratepayer Protection Pledge, where numerous AI and tech firms gathered at the White House to sign this so-called pledge, where they said that they were going to keep the cost of new AI data centers from impacting Americans. Amazon, Google, Meta, Microsoft, OpenAI, xAI, and of course Oracle all claimed that they were going to do whatever was possible so that while building these massive new data centers around the country, which many Americans are increasingly against, that it won't cost them any money. They promise that while they build the tech dystopia, it's not going to cost you any extra money. It says, under this new agreement, big tech companies are committing to fully cover the cost of increased electricity production required for AI data centers, and that would mean prices for American communities will not go up, and in many cases will actually go down, Trump claimed. Oracle said that they are, quote, committed to paying their own way on energy, hiring local, protecting local water sources, and enriching communities across the country. And of course, they mention water sources because there's an increasing number of communities around the world around the country, really around the world, who are opposed to data centers because of the strain on local water supplies. Now, if you want to trust the AI overlords that they're going to keep their pledge, go for it. But I think that it's good reason to be skeptical of that. And the other thing I add here is that this is yet another example of the industry and the government assuming that Americans actually want more data centers. There has been little to no public consultation or comment period for the construction of these facilities. It's just another push towards the technocratic state where AI is ubiquitous and we're not even really being given a choice. So that was March 5th, beginning of March. Then March 20th, Trump releases the so-called National Policy Framework for Artificial Intelligence. This is another big step, after previous executive orders he's had on AI that he did in the first year. And there's a couple of concerning areas. One of them deals with parental controls for AI, and the other one is about preemption of state AI laws. So the section on parental controls said that, quote, Congress should establish commercially reasonable, privacy protective age assurance requirements, such as parental attestation for AI platforms and services likely to be accessed by minors. And so what that means, in plain English, is that they're trying to make it hard for kids to get onto the internet or access AI or access porn. And this one's specifically about AI, but we're seeing examples of this in other places. And so they'll ask you to take a selfie or take a picture of your ID, your license or passport or something of that sort. And there are definitely ways to do this, which don't require biometrics, but many of us, and I know some of you out there, are concerned that this is going to lead to biometrics being the norm for accessing the internet or for downloading apps, like governments in the UK and Australia are pressing companies to do already to implement such measures. So could the call for protecting the children be another gateway to the long-feared Internet ID, which allows governments and big tech firms to control access to the internet itself? Time will tell, of course, but it's definitely concerning. Now, regarding the preempting of the states' rights to pass laws regulating AI, this is what it says. Congress should preempt state AI laws that impose undue burdens to ensure a minimally burdensome national standard consistent with these recommendations, not 50 discordant ones. And it also continues, states should not be permitted to regulate AI development because it is an inherently interstate phenomenon with key foreign policy and national security implications. So this is the old argument where they look, for one, I'm an anarchist, right? I don't like government. I'm not trying to pass more government laws or ban all the things to protect us from from things like AI. I don't necessarily know it's a solution, although I do think that things like AI, technologies like AI and facial recognition technology do present unprecedented threats to our freedoms and our liberties and our privacy. So I don't know if we had a, ideal, perfect saints in government, sure, great. Maybe you could do something like that, but that's not the situation we're dealing with. So we can pretty much suspect that the governments are going to use these calls for regulating AI. And we're trying to prevent a patchwork of this state has this law and this state has this law. Sorry, guys, that's how things work. We already do that. We already have a patchwork of laws in the United States. That's how the country operates. That's what 50 states are supposed to be. It's supposed to be under the federalist system. They're supposed to be, autonomous mostly on their own, and they can create laws that are different from one state to the other. That's how things have been for a long time. But we've seen this claim with 5G, which I've reported on elsewhere, with AI, that they claim we don't need a patchwork of laws. It's going to be too hard for the telecom companies and for the AI companies. It's bullshit. In December 2025, Trump called for withholding federal broadband funding from states that attempt to regulate AI. And as I said a moment ago, this is very similar to what we're seeing right now, where there's efforts by the FCC to do the same regarding 5G technology and AI. They're trying to pass new laws. They're trying to introduce new rules under the Federal Register to make it where you can't regulate 5G and where the placement of towers go at all. And this is very similar to the data centers and to AI, because 5G and 6G are the backbone of this AI future that they're trying to build. And so they don't want us to be able to regulate them in any kind of way. And they're claiming, oh, we're removing burdensome regulation. Bullshit. This is about serving their corporate buddies. Trump's National Policy Framework for Intelligence document was developed by the Office of Science and Technology Policy Director Michael Kratsios and White House Special Advisor for AI and Crypto, David Sachs. Although, as I note here, shortly after this announcement, David Sachs confirmed that he was no longer serving as czar, and he, along with Michael Kratsios, have now been appointed co-chairs of Trump's newly announced President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology, or PCAST. They love their acronyms. And as I've recently reported, Michael Kratsios and David Sachs are both deeply connected to Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel is a Bilderberg Steering Committee chair, co-founder of Palantir. Michael Kratsios himself attended the 2025 Bilderberg meeting in Stockholm, Sweden, and he was at the one that just happened where the Bilderberg group, I don't know if you guys heard this, but they just met like 2 weeks ago in early April. They don't usually meet till June, but they met April. And when I wrote this article, details on whether Kratsios and other Trump cabinet members will attend have not been released. But I can tell you now, we were able to confirm Michael Kratsios, Trump's what was his title? Director of the Office of Science and Technology Policy. He did attend the Bilderberg Group, as he did in 2025. So you've got people in Trump's cabinet who are directly connected to Bilderberg, not to mention the fact that Peter Thiel is a steering committee member of the Bilderberg Group, as is Alex Karp, and Palantir is just making all kinds of money along with their buddies Oracle. So you got this whole Bilderberg connection going on. All right, so let's continue. So Trump creates this PCAST, this whole, President's Council on Science and Technology. And who else did he appoint there? Of course, Larry Ellison of Oracle, Oracle's executive vice chair, Safra Katz, Mark Zuckerberg, Andreessen Horowitz, co-founder Mark Andreessen, Google co-founder Sergey Brin, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang, and Dell Technologies chairman and CEO Michael Dell. So it goes on and on and on. Then March 31st, this is a big month for Oracle, I'm telling you. Oracle announces multiple AI deals with the Trump administration. They literally, on this day, March 31st, they just had several announcements relating to their partnerships with the U.S. government. Some of these were titles like Oracle's AI-powered financials help federal agencies modernize operations and advance mission outcomes. Also, Oracle empowers defense industrial base to innovate at scale with new isolated cloud. Then the big ones that I think were most important were this one: Oracle unveils AI data platform for U.S. government, what they're calling Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, OCI. They had another one: Oracle expands AI infrastructure options for U.S. government customers. And that one made it clear that the U.S. government will also have access to the use of Elon Musk's XAI Grok, and that NVIDIA's Nemotron AI models are helping to further streamline completing tasks and data sharing. So you got this big old swamp soup of Oracle, Grok, Google, and others, but Oracle's they had a big month in March, and they're having a big couple of years with all these contracts they're signing with the U.S. government. And while these press releases focus on the efforts to increase the speed of communication between agencies and summarize data across varied agencies, the idea of having the U.S. government rely on a single AI platform to unify Americans' data should send shivers down your spine. if you're paying attention. And if you really, trust the US government or trust Oracle, something's wrong, go get your head checked out. And let me give you some more reason to be skeptical, especially after Oracle was forced to pay $115 million in July 2024 to settle a lawsuit accusing the company of invading people's privacy by collecting their personal information and selling it to third parties. These are what were known as digital dossiers, which contained information on what websites people visited, where they banked, purchased gas, went to dinner, shopped, and used their credit cards. And all of that data was being sold to third-party marketing firms. Wouldn't you know it? And none of this should be any surprise if you really understand the history of Oracle, as I outlined in the rest of this article. And as I've outlined before, I'm not going to do it again here, but I kind of hinted at this earlier, that Oracle was helping Trump during the COVID-19 panic. Larry Ellison says that they took their name Oracle from a CIA project, codename Oracle. There's a book called The Difference Between God and Larry Ellison, where the author said, quote, Oracle wouldn't exist if it weren't for government contracts. And as I mentioned, that right after 9/11 in January 2002, Larry Ellison published an op-ed in the New York Times calling for digital IDs to prevent terrorism. And he said a national security database combined with biometrics, thumbprints, handprints, or iris scans is best used to detect people with false identities. And not only that, the Oracle hires all kinds of CIA agents, and they lobby both Democrats and Republicans. And Larry Ellison's calling for using facial recognition and technology to keep people on their best behavior. And as I mentioned, Larry Ellison and Peter Thiel, they've got a relationship going back years. They've both been part of Trump's inner circle since at least 2018. Both companies are having record profits from their contracts with the U.S. government and military under Trump. And this is just yet another example and one more step in the completion of what I'm calling the technocratic Trump administration. So there you go, guys. That article will be in the show notes. I know it's a heavy one. And when it comes to this kind of stuff, the technocratic state, I hear from people often like, well, Derrick, thanks for that. What the hell can we actually do about it? Well, there's no perfect situation, right? I talk about opting out. I talk about an exit and build. But if you're not even opting into Oracle, at least not voluntarily, how do you opt out of it, right? It's hard, guys. Like I get, yes, we can avoid the big tech companies and the big banks, and we can try to remove ourselves from those systems, and you should, and hopefully are, because that's what I've been talking about for 6+ years now, and pretty much for the entirety of my 16-year career. But there's a lot of ways that they're so integrated. These systems are so incestuous that it's really hard to even see how you can avoid it. And I don't have the perfect solution, but all I know is that we have to keep raising awareness. There's people out there doing great work trying to say, call your Congress people, try to stop Oracle and this and that. Look, if that makes you feel better, sending the emails, sending the calls, signing petitions, do it. I'm not black-pilled. I'm not saying to do nothing, but I don't think that's the solution. I don't think we can trust the politicians when, as I just pointed out, Oracle funds both Democrats and Republicans. They work with the CIA, the intelligence community. They're increasingly integrated with the military. It's not looking good, guys. But all hope is not lost. As long as we're alive, as long as we're breathing, we can continue on. So let's go ahead and continue on now. We're going to do some news headlines. I'm going to break down some stories that you might have missed over the last couple of weeks. All right, guys, before we get into that, let me remind you that one of the best ways you can support The Conscious Resistance is to buy shirts from our store at theconsciousresistance.com. We have 8 designs of all types, all different messages, including the one I'm wearing now, No Masters, No Slaves, Holistic Anarchism, The Conscious Resistance, You Are Beautiful, You Are Powerful, You Are Free, Exit and Build, You Are a Creator, Revolution Without Healing is a Recipe for Disaster, and for the animal rights activists, Liberate All Life. You can check those all out. They're all $25 USD plus shipping. We do ship outside of the United States, although it gets kind of expensive, but we'll do it for you. And when you click on these, you can see there's different styles, different colors, designs. We are now selling shirts in 100% USA made cotton, if you prefer that. And so check that out. That's an option. Again, the link for that will be in the show notes. Just go to theconsciousresistance.com, check out our shop tab, and you can see the link to the books and the shirts. That's an easy way to support what I'm doing here. And of course, sign up for support on Buy Me a Coffee and Substack. But all right, let's go ahead and continue. Now, as I said, we're going to just hit a few headlines here. A couple of quick ones, so we're not going to stick on these too long. And I want to get your opinions. Oh, let's make this conversational here. This one, teacher fired over outing kid to parents, claims free speech at First Circuit Court. This is from April 6th. A school insists that it has a right to help children change gender identities while keeping the parents in the dark. But does this practice violate the First Amendment? This is an interesting one, and I'm sure it's sure to trigger lots of you out there. Bonnie Manchester, a middle school teacher in Ludlow for 23 years, was fired because she revealed to a father that his 11-year-old wanted to start using a boy's name and masculine pronouns. She told the First Circuit Court on Monday that her termination was unconstitutional, and while the 3-judge panel seemed divided, most of the questions suggested an interest in seeing the case at least move forward to the next stage. One of the judges, circuit judge, asked, "We have an 11-year-old. Don't the parents have a right to know what's happening to their daughter?" This is the second time the town of Ludlow has had to defend itself in the First Circuit over the school's action regarding this particular child. The incident in early 2021 created a ruckus in part because the school adamantly claimed that it had a right to keep the parents in the dark about the students' gender identities while supporting their transitioning, with the superintendent publicly accusing any parents who objected of, quote, intolerance, prejudice, and bigotry. In 2023, the court heard the claim brought by the child's parents that the school had violated due process by keeping the child's gender identity a secret. And after mulling the question for a year and 5 months, the court ultimately decided that the school hadn't violated the parents' fundamental right to direct their child's upbringing. So it goes on from there. There's more details, but that's the general question. And now, like, the teacher who told the parents says that they had a First Amendment right to communicate things, to the parents in order to protect the child. And of course, the district is trying to keep this secret. Wow, I'm not a parent yet, but I can only imagine how infuriating this would be. And you better believe I would fight against it if my child wanted to transition or whatever. Like, again, we'll set that aside, right? Let's just say that your child was having, some problems at home. Or, internally, they went to the school counselor and said, "Hey, I'm having I'm getting bullied or something," right? I know that the transgender aspect is going to trigger a lot of people and shut down critical thinking. But let's just say the child is having some kind of problems at school, and they go to their counselor or the teacher for help, and then the school says, "You know what? We're going to help you with this. We're going to work with you on this, but we're not going to tell your parents. We're going to let this be just a private matter for you." That alone would be infuriating. Like, you find out later through a friend of a friend or something, or some teacher says, "Hey, I got to tell you this," but the whole school knows that your child's been being bullied and they've been dealing with it, trying to help, they're trying to do their best, but they've been keeping it a secret from you. I think that's what annoys me and probably most of you who are parents the most. But go ahead and comment below. What do you guys think about this? Does the teacher have a First Amendment right to speak out and to share this information with the parents? Or were they in the wrong for violating the child's freedom and the child's privacy, so that maybe the child wants this to be something kept from their parents? Again, obviously, when you're under 18, you're considered your parents have guardianship over you, basically ownership over you, stewardship over you. So you have very limited rights as a child. And I don't always agree with that. But I also don't agree with these authorities, especially the schools, going behind parents' back. But let me know what you guys think about that one real quick. These next couple ones relate to immigration. And this is another one. The other one was a teacher being fired. This is a judge being fired after blocking the deportation of pro-Palestinian students. The immigration judge's abrupt dismissals mark the latest effort by the Trump administration to reshape the country's immigration courts. The Trump administration has fired 2 immigration judges who dismissed high-profile deportation cases against international students who had advocated for Palestinians. The firings of the judges Rupa Patel and Nina Froese mark the latest efforts by the Trump admin's efforts to reshape the country's immigration courts. The administration has dismissed dozens of immigration judges and has put judges under pressure to deny asylums and order deportations. Unlike federal judges in the independent judicial branch, the immigration judges work for the Justice Department and are hired and fired by the Attorney General. So basically, if they don't comply the way that the administration wants, whatever administration, they can be removed. The 2 judges who were terminated alongside 4 colleagues on Friday, they had overseen 2 high-profile cases by the government against students, Rumeisa Ozturk and Mohsin Madawi. You guys may remember this one, Rumeisa Ozturk, Turkish-born student at Tufts University. She was kidnapped off the streets by masked Icemen because she didn't even write it, I think. She supported and co-signed an op-ed in the student newspaper calling for Palestinian rights. and she was taken by ICE, and then she was released. And so the judges refused to deport her. But I will add to that, kind of side note, I recently saw that she kind of self-deported and went back to Turkey because of, basically just out of fear that they were just going to keep harassing her. So unfortunately, it's not a win, but this is just another example that the Trump administration is continuing to try to pressure people who won't comply with their agendas. And I know a lot of MAGA and people who support this, militarization and authoritarian agenda say, well, these are activist judges. And so they're not complying. They're not actually doing their job. So of course we got to get rid of them. They're all Biden era appointees, et cetera, et cetera. I think, sure, they may have been appointed by Biden, but there's also been judges who were appointed by Reagan, Bush, and even Trump himself who have ruled against him. So I don't think it's as easy as saying these are activist judges. But I digress. All right, this one, we'll continue with looking at ICE and some of their actions. Minnesota County announces kidnapping investigation into ICE agents. Officials say federal agents likely forced their way into a U.S. citizen's home without a warrant and led him into sub-zero temperatures, wearing little more than a pair of his underwear, his shorts, I think. You guys might remember this happened. I think the original incident was back in January 18th. Now, before I get into this, you guys remember a couple of weeks ago, I was at CPAC and I confronted the former head of Customs and Border Patrol, Greg Bovino, the guy who was like the main dude on the ground in Minnesota. And I asked him, well, what about the reports about American citizens being detained by ICE? And he said, where? There's none of them. Those are all lies. We don't stop Americans. And it's been well documented by ProPublica and other reports, as well as just videos on social media, that Americans were and still are continuing to be harassed by ICE in different parts of the country. You might not be seen in the headlines right now, but it is and was happening. So this is one example of that. Mr. Greg Bovino, what do you have to say about this? Let's get into this one. So local Minnesota officials announced an investigation Monday into potential crimes committed by federal agents during arrest of an American citizen in the Twin Cities. Officials in Ramsey County, Minnesota said that ICE may have committed kidnapping, burglary, and false imprisonment during the January 18th arrest of Shong Lee Scott Tao, a Hmong immigrant and naturalized U.S. citizen with no criminal record. Federal immigration agents forced their way into his St. Paul home, handcuffed him, took him outside dressed only in shorts and Crocs in sub-freezing temperatures. He was driven around and questioned for about an hour before being returned home. DHS spokesperson told Courthouse News that the officers were executing a warrant targeting suspected sexual predators who were allegedly tied to the property when they encountered him, who they said he refused to be fingerprinted or ID'd through facial recognition, which is his right because he was doing nothing illegal. So it's perfectly legal and constitutional, by the way, for him to say, fuck you, I'm not going to be fingerprinted or facial recognition when I'm not doing anything wrong. The spokesperson for ICE said, as with any law enforcement agency, it is standard protocol to hold all individuals in a house of an operation for the safety of the public and law enforcement. Tao's family said those men targeted by the DHS did not live at their house. And the county attorney, John J. Choi, says there's no indication that the agents had a warrant for entry or arrest. Quote, we have been diligently working to try to get the truth. This is not about any type of predetermined agenda other than to seek the facts and seek the truth and investigate the facts. And we have, I believe, in the state of Minnesota, a sovereign right and huge public interest to have a local investigation. He made it clear his office will pursue the case regardless of the significant legal challenges it will likely face in prosecuting federal officers. So keep you updated on that one as it progresses. We got another one here. Just another example of ICE lying. New Minneapolis shooting footage contradicts initial ICE account. DHS and federal officers initially claimed 3 men violently assaulted law enforcement agents with a snow shovel and a broom handle. You guys might remember this case again back in January 14th. This was just 4 days before they took the other guy out of his house and brought him out in his underwear and drove him around, harassed him for an hour. New surveillance footage released by Minneapolis on Monday, and again, this was reported April 6th, so it's a couple weeks old, further challenged an initial federal narrative of an ICE shooting. The city-owned camera footage captures a man standing outside a home with a shovel as pursuit unfolds down the block. As the chase nears, the man drops the shovel and flees towards the house, just as another individual is seen running and falling in front of the house. Moments later, what appears to be a federal agent tackles the individual, sparking a brief physical altercation that lasts roughly 10 seconds. Sometime during the interaction, Julio Cesar Sosa Siles, a Venezuelan national, was shot in the leg by an ICE officer. The silent video provides a contrast to the initial account from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security and federal officials who said that the man had a shovel in his hand and was trying to assault the officers. Shortly after the incident, DHS claimed in a news release that 3 men, quote, violently assaulted the law enforcement with a shovel and a broom handle in an attempt to evade arrest before the agent shot him in self-defense. And former DHS Secretary and dog killer Kristi Noem quickly echoed this account, saying that the officer was fearing for his life after being ambushed and attacked. And of course, new footage shows that they freaking lied about this, and further emboldens concerns that the 2 federal officers lied under oath during sworn testimony in January. So we'll see how that develops, if anything actually happens to these 2 officers who clearly lied. And the video evidence shows no evidence of a snow shovel attack. This has been documented reports elsewhere. We'll try to keep up with these court cases because they are ongoing and developing. Nevertheless, like I said, more examples of ICE lying. Imagine that. These people would lie. You know, it's hard to believe, I know, for some of us, but it does happen. These people are full of shit, and they have an agenda, and they want to present it to MAGA and to the American public that there's these violent criminals out there, and every time they try to go do their job, they're being attacked. We keep being told that attacks on ICE agents have increased 3,000% or numbers like that. I don't know if those are accurate, but that sure is the game that they're playing. And it turns out, and more than one example, they're lying. They're full of shit. So take it for what it's worth. Now, one more headline before we jump to our final story of today. You might have missed this one because it came and went March 31st. So this is 3 weeks ago. Marco Rubio urges U.S. diplomats to use X/Twitter to fight anti-American propaganda. Wouldn't you know it? That free speech platform that everybody is so happy to talk about and claiming that Elon Musk freed the world with his free speech. Well, now U.S. diplomats are being urged by Marco Rubio, Secretary of State, to use the platform and partner with military psychological operations units in an effort to counter foreign anti-American propaganda. Yeah, you think they're really going to stop with just so-called foreign propaganda? I doubt it. And the cable, who was first reported on by The Guardian, was devoted to ways to expose foreign influence operations and falsehoods that, quote, pose a direct threat to U.S. national security and fuel hostility towards American interests. In a statement, the State Department said it would, quote, continue to take an assertive stance on this pernicious issue, and that they would use every tool in their toolkit while also protecting Americans' right to free expression. I'm sure that's what they're going to do. They're not going to come after Americans and target Americans for so-called anti-American sentiment. The cable told diplomats to, quote, coordinate with interagency partners as appropriate, signaling out the Pentagon's psychological operations, which formerly was known as Military Information Support Operations, or MISO. Not the miso soup, the good kind. This is the psychological operations kind. The cable did not elaborate, but MISO and its successor have traditionally aimed to sway enemy soldiers on the battlefield. MISO was behind U.S. propaganda efforts against the Islamic State in Syria, and including an incident in which tens of thousands of graphic cartoon-style leaflets showing recruits being shoved into a meat grinder were airdropped over the group's operations in 2015. Military PSYOP deployments have in the past led to friction with U.S. diplomats, and it goes on and on. But that's kind of the headline. So the cable urged diplomats to elevate trustworthy information to expose fakes by making use of such tools such as community notes on X, which is a cool tool that the community can come in and say, hey guys, this thing is being reported as bullshit. Here's the evidence for that. But now the PSYOP divisions are being encouraged to go and use community notes to fight back against so-called anti-American sentiment. So we'll see where that goes, guys. But that is it's another headline that hopefully if you haven't seen it, now you will share it. Again, as always, all of the articles, all the information I'm covering will be in the show notes too. All right, so let's go ahead and continue with my final story of the night. And really, this story is kind of a preview of an article I'm working on, but I wanted to get it out there because I'm sure some of you have been seeing it go around on social media, and I want to give you just a little bit more detail. So we know that about a week ago, a little more than a week ago, Melania Trump kind of surprised everybody and just gave this press conference, unprecedented press conference, where she came out and said, hey, Jeffrey Epstein did introduce me to Donald Trump. I have nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. I don't know Melania Trump. I mean, I don't know Ghislaine Maxwell. Ignore those pictures of us together. I'm trying to dispel rumors and all this kind of stuff. And we were told that she didn't even tell Trump about this, that Trump was caught off guard. And many people were wondering, why? Where is this coming from? Is there something that's about to break that we don't know about? And I think the answer is potentially yes. But the concern was like, is this related to something bigger going on that we don't know? So we're going to get into that today now and how this relates to a man named Paolo Zampolli. So first off, let's start with the Telegraph. Epstein rumors are nonsense, says man who introduced Melania to Trump. U.S. President's friend Paolo Zampolli says he is willing to testify that he was responsible for the couple meeting. And so again, what this relates to is that there have long been rumors and there have been claims in the Epstein emails that he was the one who introduced Melania to Trump. And this is because Melania Trump was a model and she was brought to the US under what's called the Einstein visa, which most of us know is bullshit. She came as a model. She wasn't, some brilliant student here on a visa. And whatever, that's fine. But because of her modeling background and because of Trump's modeling industry, pageant show history, and because of Epstein and his connection to modeling and fashion shows, including through people like Jean-Luc Brunel, who was the head of M Squared modeling agency, who was part of Epstein's trafficking network, who was arrested by the French police and then allegedly killed himself too in 2019. All of these questions swirling, people wondered, was Melania actually a victim of Epstein? Or at least was she purchased by Donald Trump from Epstein? You guys also remember during the Epstein emails that were coming out last year, there was this big scandal around this big giant kind of novelty check that Trump had signed for some amount of money. And it was kind of like a joke saying like, hey, thanks for the girl. Well, some people thought maybe this was Trump thanking Epstein for giving him Melania, for bringing Melania over from Eastern Europe and then, connecting her to Trump. But Trump and her and this guy, Paolo Zampolli, have claimed that that's a lie, that it was him who introduced the two of them, and it was not Epstein. Former model scout and close friend of Donald Trump has said he is willing to testify that he introduced the president and the first lady, not Jeffrey Epstein. Paolo Zampolli, an Italian-American businessman who now serves in the Trump administration. That's another thing, is he was awarded positions in, I believe, both Trump's administrations, and he doesn't have any political experience. So people thought maybe it was a quid pro quo for, being quiet about what he may know about Melania and Epstein. His comments come a day after Melania Trump, the first lady, made an unprecedented White House speech denying ever having a relationship with the late pedophile or being one of his victims. The 55-year-old former model also denied being introduced to her husband by Epstein. She said, I have never had any knowledge of Epstein's abuse of his victims. I've never involved in any capacity. I was not a participant. I was never on Epstein's plane, and I never visited his private island. I have never been legally accused or convicted of a crime in connection with Epstein's sex trafficking, abuse of minors, or other repulsive behavior. And like Mr. and Mrs. Trump, Mr. Zampolli was part of Epstein's social circle. And this is because he ran something called ID Model Management, a modeling talent agency in New York. And again, there's so many connections, guys, to modeling this. In fact, I don't know if it's going to show on screen while I'm recording this, but let me see. I have all these folders of, I don't think it is going to show, but I have a huge folder here on modeling and Trump and just the connection here. Elite models and ID models, from John Casablanca, from this guy Zampolli, to Jean-Luc Brunel, of course, Epstein. And I mean, it's just, there's so much here, right? So the fact that Zampolli has been connected to modeling and to Epstein and knew him, many people were suspicious of this. And again, the Trump relationship connection. So while this is going on, though, a lot of people started to wonder, why is Melania speaking about this? Why is this coming, where is this coming from? And as this article notes here, his comments of Mr. Zampolli saying, hey, I'll testify. I'm willing to testify in front of Congress. Trust me. I introduced the two of them, not Epstein. And there's been rumors that Melania was in a relationship with Mr. Zampolli first. And now, before I go any further, some of this might just sound like, okay, Derrick, this is just a bunch of rich people's, relationships. This is just gossip. What are you, Candace Owens? No. What we need to understand as I get into this deeper is that if Melania Trump is the freaking first lady of the White House and her husband is the most powerful person in the world, and they're both more deeply connected to Epstein and the Israeli network than we have been told, the fact that they have been put into the White House and nobody has exposed this is kind of a big fucking deal. So it's not just some celebrity gossip. It's a little bit more than that. So Zampoli's comments came ahead of a publication of an interview with Amanda Ungaro, who was his ex-girlfriend, ex-wife, who she gave this interview to El País, a Spanish newspaper. Miss Ungaro is a Brazilian model. She was deported to her home last year. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. And it has been alleged that Zampolli basically used his connection to Trump to get ICE to deport her before, she could reveal anything. And she was in fact sent back to Brazil, as you can see here. Trump friend asked ICE to detain the mother of his child. Paolo Zampolli, former modeling agency agent and longtime Trump ally, was in a custody battle over his son. An ICE official agreed to help. And here's a picture of Trump with Melania and Zampolli in 2016 right here. Again, the claim is that he may have dated Melania in the past. He claims he introduced the two of them. They all knew Epstein, or at least Melania definitely knew Ghislaine Maxwell. She claims it was just me being friendly whenever she said, love Mel, in an email, and that, there was no real relationship there. But I think we can all surmise that that's bullshit. So he gets his ex-wife, Zampolli gets his ex-wife or girlfriend, Amanda Ungaro, a model, also, again, another model, deported back to Brazil. And according to the New York Times and to her own testimony at this point, he used his connections with Trump to get her placed in ICE custody and ultimately deported, an outcome that may well have happened regardless of his meddling. But the ICE officials' willingness to spring into action for a Trump ally reflects a recurring theme of the second Trump administration. The levers of the government can be pulled to settle a personal score. So that's one piece of the puzzle, right? Now, let's continue on here. So she starts giving interviews to El País, and she's been talking to more and more people. And this is kind of what some people thought, okay, Melania is speaking up because Amanda Ungaro, the ex of Paolo Zampolli, who has a child with him, was deported. And she was posting on Twitter as well, going on to Melania's post saying like, look, I'm going to expose you, this and that. Now, before I go further, I do want to give credit to my friend and colleague, Whitney Webb, and Mark Goodwin. They wrote this report, August 2025. It's a deep one. First Friends, how the first couple's consigliere went from modeling mogul to special envoy. And they look at how Paolo Zampolli, who again has been appointed, he has like what is his title? Special envoy of the President of the United States of America for global partnerships. They look at, his whole history. And they did mention Amanda to their credit here. I'll read this here. It says, there's also the fact that Zampoli's wife, Amanda Ungaro, a Brazilian model whom he married when she was 19, she appears on the Epstein flight logs in the company of Jean-Luc Brunel when she was a minor. So she was flown on Epstein's plane with Jean-Luc Brunel, the disgraced serial abuser who was called out as far back as the 1980s in the 60 Minutes report, and nothing was ever done about it. I've got a copy of that report on theconsciousresistance.com, search Jean-Luc Brunel. And she was on the flight logs flying on Epstein's plane. And we go a little further here. So Brunel, on a flight accompanying Epstein from New York to Paris, brought one underage Brazilian teen with him named Amanda Ungaro. The flight coincided with Epstein's purchase of his luxurious French apartment, later linked to trafficking. Ungaro, who was born in 1986, was underage at the time, either 16 or 17 years old. A few years later, she married Paolo Zampolli, though they claim to have been dating for some time before their marriage. In 2001, 1 year before she flew on Epstein's plane, Zampolli was quoted by Vanity Fair as courting a, quote, young model who lived in Brazil, saying he was sending her Easter eggs and teddy bears to Brazil before they had even gotten together. Now, we don't know if it was Amanda Ungaro, but it's pretty clear that it was her, and she would have been 15 or 16 at the time, but we don't know for certain. So there's a lot more here that Whitney covers, Whitney and Mark cover from the past that I encourage you guys to check out. That will be in the show notes. But again, she pops up more recently. She's deported by ICE, and now she's speaking to Spanish media as well as Brazilian media, O Globo. She did these interviews. This was back just in late March. Brazilian former model says Trump ally used influence to have her deported amid child custody battle. And an exclusive interview with O Globo, Amanda Ungaro says Paolo Zampolli asked ICE to detain her and later contacted prosecutors about the couple's son's testimony. Then she says this, Brazilian ex-model describes Epstein flight. There were about 30 young girls, beautiful and very young. She says she saw minors sitting on Jeffrey Epstein's lap and alleged a modeling agent tried to place drugs in her bag on a 2002 flight from Paris to New York. The modeling agent was Jean-Luc Brunel. And if you can read this article again, this will be linked below. She was 17 when she was brought onto Epstein's flight. And, she was already kind of being brought into this world of Paolo Zampolli and Jeffrey Epstein and Jean-Luc Brunel. Again, Zampolli founded the agency ID Models, which Epstein frequently visited in New York. We know that Trump was involved in Models, and the two of them, Paolo Zampolli and Epstein, tried to buy Elite Model Management in 2004. And it goes on and on and on. You can see her name, Amanda Ungaro, here listed on the flight logs. Again, I will encourage you guys to read these show notes. I'm working on a deep dive article on all of this. But that brings me here to the latest news in just the last couple days here. I tweeted this out. Why is the special envoy of the President of the United States of America for Global Partnerships, who has connections with Epstein and the Trumps, threatening to sue the media? Could that be because his ex-wife, Amanda Ungaro, says she has dirt on him and Melania? And I'll go ahead and open this real quick. This is what he posted this week. This is because the Italian media is now reporting on it. Not only is it the American media kind of picking up this story, where most of the American media is staying away from what she's actually saying, what Amanda Ungaro is actually saying. If you go to her, I'll open up her Twitter account here in just a second. But the Italian media is reporting on the Brazilian media, Spanish media. This is what he said. Second notice to all media outlets. We confirm that legal actions are currently underway across multiple jurisdictions, including the US, Italy, and Brazil. Our legal team is actively identifying and pursuing all individuals, entities, and accounts involved in the dissemination of false, misleading, or defamatory content. Any media outlet or individual that publishes, supports, or amplifies such content will be included in a class action lawsuit and held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. So why is he running scared? Could it be, again, that weeks ago, Amanda Ungaro, she hasn't posted anything on her own account other than this one pinned post, but you can go to see her replies. She's been commenting and calling out Melania Trump for weeks now. You can go back and just see all the different places she's been commenting and calling out calling out Melania and saying, I'm going to expose you. I'm going to expose you for what I know and things like that. She might have deleted some of her posts, but you can see, you can find screenshots of them and stuff like that. So here she is, FLOTUS, First Lady of the United States. When we talk about breaking the system in the US, she's going on here. Yeah. So that's who is the wife of Paolo Zampolli, who's now warning the media outlets that he's going to sue them for talking about it. And as I tweet here, Zampolli is freaking out because Italian news channel Rai Play put out a new report on the story claiming that there's a deal between him and Melania and that Israel has pictures of Epstein and Melania that they are using to blackmail Trump. And here's the Italian video report. And as I say here, I'm working on translation. Somebody's already sent me a YouTube copy with the English transcript. I'm working on putting that out publicly, and this will be included in any articles I do maybe next week. Here's the Italian video report, and this will be in the show notes. It's called The Epstein War. Here is the Italian article. Let me go ahead and just translate it. Of course, the translation is not perfect, but it gives us some idea of what's being discussed. And it says, Melania Trump and Epstein's shadow. Amanda Ungaro's unpublished testimony to report. Zampoli's ex will reveal very embarrassing things. And so they talk about here. Let me go ahead and just control find Israel. Let's see if they got Israel mentioned. No, they don't have it in here. It's in the actual video. But this is some of that. And then again, you can find here is the report, the Epstein War right here on this Italian channel, Rai Play. And it's about 30 minutes long. They got an interview with Amanda Ungaro, as you can see right here. That's her right there. They even apparently interviewed Paolo Zampolli, and he's upset because I guess he said some things that he regrets now. But the report's out there. I don't think this scandal is going away just yet. Like I said earlier, I don't think it's just a matter of like, okay, this is just rich people fighting with each other. Yeah, that's one way to kind of break it down if you want to see it that way. That's Paolo Zampolli right there, and he's being interviewed by them. So I'm going to be watching this report tonight, and I will share my conclusions with you. But all of the show notes everything will be linked in the show notes if you want to dive into that. It's a whole nother rabbit hole, guys. I've been even hesitant to write about it because there's so many pieces, and obviously there's so many other things going on in the world. We still got Iran war going on right now. I didn't even touch on any of that today, but we know that it's still happening. the so-called ceasefire has been broke. Israel's been bombing Lebanon. The Trump administration, the U.S. military just seized an Iranian tanker and fired on it. Things are not over in that regard. So the Epstein files haven't died. The Iranian war continues. Israel keeps committing war crimes. The Trump administration is protecting these facilities that are abusing beagles and other animals. Oracle and the technocrats continue to move forward in the Trump administration. It's a lot happening, guys, but I hope that you are all finding some way, some time to, find peace in your lives in some capacity, because that's what I'm working on constantly. I am not allowing myself to be bogged down by the insanity. Of course, I'm out here working on my land in Mexico. We're getting very close. The Conscious Agora, our Conscious Agora Eco Village, our community, we're getting very close to starting to build some structures. In a few weeks, we're going to be building our first bathrooms. We have a compost toilet that we built out there. It's very basic, but we're going to have 2 showers and 2 toilets. It's going to be a hempcrete and sugarcrete made from fibers from sugarcane structure. I'm going to be doing videos all about this and documenting this coming soon. And every time I see the world getting crazy, I'm like, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. This is why I have land. This is why we're working on growing our own food. This is why we're building community. This is why I'm living and breathing, exit and build, because I know it is the answer, my friends. So I hope that whatever you believe in, you are making steps to move closer and closer in that direction, because that's what really matters, my friends. That's what really matters more than anything. And I hope that you guys will continue to put your energy into that, and not only staying informed, but don't let the headlines and the constant barrage of insanity beat you down to the point that you just become black-pilled or hopeless or apathetic, nihilistic, and you don't do anything for yourself, because that's what we should be focusing on more than ever. All right, guys, as we get out of here, let me remind you, in case you're in Texas, Confluence Festival is happening this weekend in Central Texas. I will be there along with my love, Miriam. She's going to be doing some live painting. There's going to be a lot of speakers there, a lot of cool people. I'm going to be performing my music, as you can see here. 33, I'll be performing Friday night. I'll be performing again on Saturday night with WFX and with Presence. So check that out. I think all the tickets are sold out, but if you got one, then I hope to see you there. I will have my books for sale and my shirts for sale as well. I'll be there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and I hope to see you there. Of course, I want to remind you guys, bookmark theconsciousresistance.com. You can see all of my latest content. I got this new interview with Scott Horton from the Libertarian Party Texas Convention last week. I'll be releasing my talk that I gave them, talking all about why politics is not the answer and why exit and build strategy is. So stay tuned to that coming later this week. And of course, reminder, if you want to support us, the best way to do so is either by buying a shirt through our website with our 8 cool designs, get your size, get your color, get your favorite phrase, or go to theconsciousresistance.com/invest, sign up for monthly support on Buy Me a Coffee, Substack, or you can send support via crypto if you want to do that. And I appreciate everybody who does. And of course, final reminder, the Activation Tour starts May 1st in Prescott, Arizona, and then pick it up on May 13th in Denver, Colorado. Really, really excited for this, guys. Go to activationtour.org, and you can get all of those details and find out everything about where I'm going to be, and we can connect in person on the road. So thank you guys so much for being here. I really, really do want to emphasize what I said a moment ago. Put some energy into connecting in your local community, whether you come to my events or you just get plugged in through the Freedom Cells Network, freedomcells.org, or you just put up flyers in your local community centers and coffee shops, or you just go up and talk to random people at the farmers markets, whatever it may be. Do something to get plugged in locally, because it's more important than ever, my friends. I hope you guys enjoyed this show. I'll see you next time, and enjoy this song from my brothers WFX and Presence. It's called Come Again. I'll see you guys soon. Until next time, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.
Sing along, bust up a rhythm, oh you know we coming strong. Now we're connecting in the right way. We are projecting love as we pray. No matter who you are, I'm telling you that you belong. This community could never ever do you wrong. We are one tribe and one family, pushing light all night and all day. Come again, come again. I will light it up, let the fire transcend. come again, come again. Speaking my truth, I could never let it end, yo. Come again, come again. I will disrupt Babylon to the end. Come again, come again. Revving up the youth once again. Hey! Picking up the pace as the bass roam through. Jump up higher if you want a better view. Tune up a frequency that we can all create, cause this is our power, now we all collaborate. Pushing love and light is what we do. This is how we get through.
Cause in a bond till we rock it at the Casablanca. From Acapulco to Morelia we spit palabras, because we know that music is a dharma. We're spreading the right morality through melody and make us sharper. Making mistakes next time we try and harder. I'm praying up to the Holy Mother and the Holy Father, and all the people are awakening up to the power. Consciousness is quickening, it's getting louder. And now we're living today, tomorrow I guarantee. We gotta choose to be free until our souls are complete. It's how we gonna succeed, we never need to compete. We're playing respectfully, a vibe of integrity. We take the chains off and let the place roll. I'm cooking up a fire like a crowd pound. And when the beat bouncing like a pogo stick that they smoke so thick, and I get a toast that is a boom.
It up, let the fire transcend. Come again, come again. Speaking my truth, I could never let it end. Oh, come again, come again. I will disrupt Babylon till the end. Come again, come again. Shake up the youth once again. Hey!
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.